In the vibrant city of Lagos, where the bustling street never seems to rest, there lived a young woman named Odessa. At 26, Odessa had everything anyone could dream of. She was beautiful, bold, and successful. Her wig business was booming with customers from every corner of the city. Other small wig vendors relied on her, buying in bulk to sell to their home customers. She had a team of staffs who worked hard for her, and her business kept on growing. By all means, Odessa had it all, but there was one thing that overshadowed her success, which is her temper. Odessa was known for her fiery outbursts. If anyone crossed her path, they would feel the force of her anger. Her voice, sharp and cutting, filled the air whenever she spoke. Never a kind word and never a smile on her face. She didn't know how to talk without shouting, and her anger follows her wherever she goes. She was especially close to her mother and her aunt, the only two people who understood her. But even though they couldn't calm the storm within her, her fiancé, Chike, had been with her for years. They loved each other, but their relationship was a battlefield. Odessa would lash out at him over the smallest things, and he would shout back. But Chike, as patient as he was, he had his own limits. One evening, after another heated argument, Chike sat on the edge of the bed, his face in his hands. Odessa, this can't continue. You can't keep yelling at everyone, especially me. I'm your partner, not your enemy. Odessa, standing with her hands crossed, rolled her eyes. You can't tell me what to do, Chike. You can't dictate my life for me. If you can't cope with me, then leave. Her words were sharp, but deep down, her heart was screaming for him to stay. She needed him. He was the one steady thing in a chaotic world. But her pride wouldn't let her say that. Chike looked at her, his eyes heavy with sadness. Maybe that's what I need to do, he said quietly. And with that, he walked out of the door. Odessa stood there, shocked and her heart racing. She had pushed him away. The man who had stood by her side through thick and thin was gone, and yet she couldn't stop herself from feeling like she had won. After all, she never lost an argument, or so she thought. Days turned into weeks, and soon Odessa noticed that people around her were changing too. Her staff, once loyal and hardworking, now avoided her gaze. Some even left without notice. Customers stopped coming as often, and the vendors who once depended on her started finding other suppliers. Word spread quickly in Lagos, and Odessa's reputation was crumbling. One afternoon, as she sat alone in her shop, the emptiness around her felt suffocating. Her business was failing. The few friends she had distanced themselves, and even her family found it hard to be around her. Worst of all, Chike was gone. She had everything she could ever prayed for, but in her anger, she lost it all. Odessa's wasn't always this way. Her temper had been growing inside her since she was a child. Her father, a strict and harsh man, had never wanted a daughter. He dreamed of a son who would inherit his name and grow to be successful. Instead, he got Odessa. He never hid his disappointments. He would shout at her, hit her for the smallest mistakes, and constantly reminded her that she wasn't what he wanted. Odessa's mother tried to protect her, but it was never enough. Her father's anger became her anger. She learned that the only way to survive was to be tough, to hit back harder than she was hit. So when her father died in a car accident, she thought she had broken free, but the anger stayed within her, growing stronger each year until it became all she knew. So one night, after locking herself in her room, Odessa broke down in tears. She cried for all the people she had hurt, for the loss of her business, for Chike. She cried for the little girl inside her who had been mistreated by the man who was supposed to love her. And for the first time, she admitted to herself that she needed help. A few days later, her aunts suggested that she see a therapist. At first, Odessa was skeptical. How could talking to someone help her? But nowhere else to turn. She agreed. The therapist was kind, patient, and listened to Odessa's story without judgment. Slowly, Odessa began to understand that her anger wasn't power, it was pain. She had been crying her father's hatred inside her for years, and it was destroying her life. After a few weeks, Odessa worked on herself. She learned to control her outbursts, to speak calmly, and to express her emotions without lashing out. It wasn't easy though, but with time, she began to change. She reached out to those she had wronged, apologizing sincerely. Some forgive her, others didn't. But Odessa knew that her journey wasn't about getting everyone back. It was about healing. After months of hard work, Odessa decided to reach out to Chike. She didn't know if he would take her back, but she needed to try. They met at a small cafe. The tension between them was heavy in the air. "I'm sorry, Chike," Odessa began. Her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. "I know I have hurt you, and I understand if you don't want to forgive me, but I'm working on myself at the moment. I'm trying to be better." Chike looked at her for a long moment. "I've missed you, Odessa," he said finally, "but I can't go back to the way things were." "I don't want to go back either," she said. She said with her eyes bleeding, "I want to move forward with you, if you will have me." Discussed for hours, walking through their past and imagining a future where they could be together, stronger and better than before. It wouldn't be easy, but they were willing to try. And so, Odessa began to rebuild her life, piece by piece. She had lost a lot, but in losing it all, she found herself. The storm inside of her had finally calmed, and its place was a new strength, a quiet, peaceful strength, the kind that didn't need to shout to be heard.